All righty. Okay. Well, I know folks are probably still joining, but we'll get started. We'll go through some logistics and things at the outset, which for those of you that have been on 100 Zoom calls will probably seem very familiar. So welcome everybody today. Thank you so much for joining us for this session about how BYU-Idaho is revolutionizing the online student support model. I'll introduce our guests in a second, but just to let you know, so first of all, I'm Katie Kepler. I am co-founder and CEO at Inscribe. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Inscribe, we're a virtual community platform and we help scale student support and engagement at all different places across the student journey. So we get used in a lot of different places. Today, we're going to focus on a use case that is really reimagining how we're doing student support for online students in the classroom. If you have questions, we would love for this session to be very interactive. So if you have any questions, please feel free to post them either in the Q&A space or you can put them directly in the chat. I am joined today by my colleague Danielle Bonner, who is going to be helping facilitate, and she'll be keeping an eye on both of those spaces and is fully empowered to interrupt me at any point so that we can address your questions live or we'll get them answered in that chat space. So I am super excited about our guest speakers that are joining me today. So just to introduce them quickly. So Dr. Joelle Galbraith was recently appointed the Online Academic Services Director at BYU-Idaho, and his primary responsibility is over the online tutoring and TAs. Prior to this, he was the Director of Online Instruction, where he led management development and evaluation of over 1,800 adjunct faculty all across the United States. He has worked in online learning for over 25 years and has a passion for the promise and access that online education offers learners all over the world. When not engaging in online and helping with online learning, Dr. Galbraith enjoys creating and photographing firsthand experiences through travel and exploration. He and his wife have 5 mostly grown children. And we're also joined, so welcome Joelle, thank you so much for being here. And we're also joined today by Brian Godfrey, who is also at BYU-Idaho as the online tutoring manager. And in this role, he oversees level 0, 1, and 2 tutoring efforts, which we'll get into and explain a little bit more about what that means in the webinar, and helps to serve a growing population of online students. Brian has worked in higher ed for 9 years and held positions in advising, student records, and student support. He got his bachelor's degree from BYU-Idaho in organizational communication and a master's in professional communication from Southern Utah University. The focus of his master's thesis was on the role of emotion in conflict, which would be very useful, I think, in a lot of cases. And Brian's main passions are around solving problems and overseeing projects with collaboration. In his free time, he loves hiking, golfing, and spending time with his wife and 5 kids. You guys got a lot of kids between you. So Joelle and Brian, thank you again so much for being here. I'm really excited to welcome you to the stage today. So I am pretty much going to hand it over to you guys to introduce a little bit more about BYU-Idaho and the mission that you've been on and that we've been able to partner with you on. I will just say at the outset for the folks joining us, we would love to know a little bit about you as well. So if you want to just take a minute while we kick off, just drop in the chat, who you are, where you're from, and what brought you here today. And if there's something that you really want to make sure that we cover, or that you're really hoping to learn, please let us know, because we'll make sure that we tap into that either in the discussion or as part of the Q&A process a little later. All right, so why are we here? So I usually sort of talk a little bit about just the context of community and learning. I mean, at Inscribe, we're big believers that learning is always better when it's done in a collaborative way. And bringing community into the learning space not only helps students connect and reiterate their learning better, but it also helps improve the efficiency of the system because everybody is supporting everybody and not all of the work is falling on the shoulders of just a small few. And I think that's been, even more relevant over the last year as a lot of different learning modalities have been disrupted or changed through the changes that have come with COVID, and people began to experiment with new models about how we can support and engage students. And so I think it's just a very relevant topic to be thinking about it. And it's really exciting to see some of the innovations that BYU-Idaho has been thinking about, and specifically because they serve not just an online student population, but a pretty unique one, which I'm going to let them talk about. So let me turn it over to you guys. Tell us a little bit about BYU-Idaho and the school, and then how your online tutoring strategy has evolved.
Good. Yeah, I don't really have too much that on the slides there, just about our school, but we're obviously in Idaho, Brigham Young University, Idaho. Our main campus, kind of our flagship campus, is in Utah, Provo, Utah, and with some, I think 40,000 campus students, and but in our system, the BYU Brigham Young University, Idaho, or Brigham Young University system, there are four colleges. There's the main flagship campus, Utah. There's BYU-Idaho, there's BYU-Hawaii, and a business college in Salt Lake City, downtown. So and then there's this other big group. Without getting, you guys don't care too much about our setup, but there's we have this Byu Pathway Worldwide, and BYU-Idaho has kind of been we service that pathway program with worldwide students, and that we've got some 60,000 students in that program, and those are the students that we serve online. We also serve a lot of the campus students here at BYU-Idaho. In fact, we're about 50-50 serving those online students, or the students in our courses are about 50% from campus, 50% from fully online students. So that's kind of just the university. We've got a lot of online students, but our particular group, sorry, and I've got an abbreviation there, OAS, is the Online Academic Services Group. And we serve the online students. BYU-Idaho campus has their own kind of academic services that we coordinate with and draw from and partner with, but their primary goal is serving the campus students. Ours is this online group, which is fairly significant because it is worldwide. Our students come from I guess I could have had some of those stats, but from all over. We are a church supported school, and that's kind of one of the reasons that the students come from everywhere. We're sponsored and supported by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and the school it draws a lot of the membership of that church from around the world to the school through online.
Awesome.
So to get into tutoring, I guess.
Should I go
right?
next?
Is that where we want to go?
Yeah. Do you want to? Well, I think it's really interesting. I mean, I think there's probably a lot of folks on the session today that have some sort of online, programming and online students. I think the unique aspect of your online population really being worldwide and intentionally worldwide kind of adds even another level of complexity to your ability to support them. So I think I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you brought that up too. It really does. Our biggest groups are Mexico, Brazil, Philippines, and Nigeria and Ghana. So there's and that's important because network and data and that type of stuff is hard to be running what we're doing for years, and that's face-to-face tutoring. These Zoom meetings, live meetings are difficult. We needed a solution that was less video intensive in many cases. We were quick to say that our that are what we call our level 2 tutoring. That's the live chat like we're doing now with either chat or with Zoom is the tool we use. That, that's never going to go away. But we needed to offer more of our international students more options, a broader spectrum of tutoring resources and tutoring channels that support them when and where they need help.
Yeah.
So that's kind of every decision we make. It's like, is this helping students when and where they need that help? Our live tutoring is all based currently here in Idaho. It actually works out fairly well. We're like 6 to, Brian, what are we, 6 to 7, well, 6 to 10 with some of our tutoring centers, or 6 to 11, 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. That covers the globe fairly decently. But that's just kind of from a, saying that doesn't necessarily help a student in Tonga that needs help at our 2 a.m. So they could get help at 8 a.m. their time, but then they got to be at work at 8. So even though it kind of covers their daylight hours, it doesn't cover necessarily when they need that help.
Yeah.
At 3
and I think a lot of people find that's true of US based students too, who are also studying at 2 in the morning, and
So expanding our spectrum, we needed to have much more peer support. We need it to be offline. We need it to be available 24/7. And we've partnered with Inscribe to provide us a platform where we can offer that tutoring to those students. So just to kind of go over this, it's level 0 is this knowledge base that we build within Inscribe. That's, our knowledge base is basically a student asked a question last semester about X, and the answer is either received from a peer or from one of our tutors, our hired tutors, and that becomes part of the knowledge base. So when this semester, if someone asks that same question, hopefully they search and they see that, oh, it's been asked and answered, and thank you, that's just what I needed, and they got that answer they needed at 3 a.m. And didn't have to wait for anything. So that's the level 0 knowledge base. It's kind of self-help tutoring based on this community that Katie described of learners that have gone before. Level 1 is kind of the community that you're in and part of this semester. It's your peer support. You didn't see the question in the knowledge base. You're asking a new question, and you hope within the hour or so, or within a couple hours, you get an answer from a peer or from a tutor. That's kind of our level 1. And our level 2 is, of course, I need some expert help from one of our hired tutors, and you can check, you can link out of Inscribe to our scheduling utility that helps you find an available appointment.
Awesome.
That's that.
Yeah. So we were going to talk a little bit about the setup and how you kind of organized Inscribe to provide the support for folks. Is that going to be you, Joelle, or are we going to have Brian talk a little bit about
We're going to switch to Brian, but I will just say that we don't do our tutoring section specific. So like in this example here, Accounting 202, we cover all the sections. We may have 20 sections of Accounting 202. The tutoring for Accounting 202, just because the way we build our online courses at BYU-Idaho is kind of centralized. All the sections are the same. All the online sections are the same of Accounting 202. So we dump all our students into a single Accounting 202 section.
Gotcha. So you have like a single sort of Inscribe support community for Accounting 202,
yes,
but there might be 15 or 20 sections that are all pointing to that same space.
Better
Great.
said that.
Awesome.
Yeah, so the main thing to add to that is just we're able to really take advantage of that with there being uniformity across sections. So you think about the amount of students in 20 sections, and that question that gets asked as part of level 1 peer-to-peer service, there's more likelihood that a student could see that question when you don't just rely on who's within one section. Instead, you magnify it by 20. And so that's been really helpful. We've also really enjoyed the flexibility as far as how we set up the communities. Looking forward, we're already thinking about ideas of you know, it may not always make sense to have a community for one class, but it could be a lot of the research we've done and talking with other universities is there's this skills-based tutoring or subject-specific tutoring. So rather than having a community for every accounting class, it could be a community for all accounting principles. And there's that flexibility with Inscribe. We haven't done that yet, but we're thinking about doing that. And then there was one other thing that I was going to mention within the way that the topics are set up here. We had flexibility on how we wanted to set up these topics. What we ended up doing was to set it up by week, because week 5, again, with that uniformity that we have at BYU-Idaho Online Learning, week 5 is the same in all of those sections. So we thought it'd be a very good fit to have a topic be called week 5. And that way, when a student is needing help and they're searching the different topics, they can go to week 5 and it shows them everything under week 5. But again, there's flexibility there. You can choose different topics to divide things up within each individual community as well.
Awesome. And I think, did we have a question on this particular subject, Danielle?
Yeah, there's a couple questions coming in here. So first is a twofold question. Do you explain to the students about the different levels that you're referring to?
Oh, do you share your support level model with the students?
We don't. That's just more behind the scenes. It drives our strategy and our vision and the decisions we make, but we don't tell a student you're using level 2 service now or level 0. So
Using the expensive service.
And then how do you advertise this model to students as a benefit to coming to your institution?
Yeah, I mean, we advertise it by getting the word out and letting them know. We use online instructors a lot to help get the word out to individual classes. But again, we're not using terms like level 0, 1, or 2. We're showing that we have tutoring resources, and there's going to be a slide in a little bit that we'll share that kind of shows that you know, how we advertise that and help drive students to it.
I don't think we've started using it as any sort of recruiting tool or to attract students to the university. And it's not scaled out yet either. We've got it in a handful, 18 or 21 or so courses. So it's not across the board yet. I suppose once it is, it would be an attractive feature to
24/7 support. That's right. I do see a question that came in about, so I think you talked a little bit about this, Joelle, but at some institutions, when there are multiple sections, faculty might be teaching that course material slightly differently, like a different approach or like a different pacing of the material. Does that happen at BYU-Idaho, and how has that impacted your implementation?
It happens, although our design is you follow the course as is. You know, you know, we kind of expect instructors to stay on target and stay on task. But there's inevitable variance. But you know, if it wasn't exactly in week 3, you know, you might, in your section, you might poke around in week 2 or, well, yeah. And you can search. You're just going to search by week. If you're searching for a problem like, let's just looking down there. I can't see necessarily a question there, but
in Business 115, you could say VLOOKUP. I want help with VLOOKUP, and you could search it, and so that wouldn't be week specific.
Yeah.
So you'd see stuff in week 4, but you'd also see it maybe if it was talked about in week 7 and week 15 as well, or yeah.
Yep. So the Inscribe communities are 100% searchable. So often if a student has a specific question, they may not navigate to the week first. They'll just go search for their question, and the system will return, you know, where that question's been answered across all different topic areas. I will say, Vera, we do have some institutions where the differences in course sections are a little bit more acute. And in those cases, what they'll sometimes do is they'll have, we have these subgroup spaces you can create in communities. So they'll have a general space for all kinds of questions. And then each faculty member will have their own like subgroup within the community to talk about things that are specific to their course section.
We have 2 Inscribe specific questions for you. The first one is, how much is Inscribe being used within the higher education industry?
Oh, yeah, okay. I thought you were getting me both.
Nope, that was it.
So Inscribe is geared right now towards the education space. So we work primarily with higher education institutions. We do work a little bit with K-12 institutions. But as you can imagine, the problems we solve are not unique to education. And so we also have some clients that are what I'd consider more in the corporate space, but still thinking about knowledge management, collaboration and communication among their employees, for example. So it does get used in some of those other spaces. I would say our primary use case right now is higher ed.
Perfect. And you actually answered the second question, which was, is Inscribe being used outside of higher ed? So
there you go. Awesome. Okay, so Brian,
Yeah,
I will
so-
turn it back over to you.
Okay, so yeah, this is a screenshot of Canvas, which is the learning management system that we use at BYU-Idaho. And this just illustrates the highlighted word that you can see off to the left. This is the front page that a student sees when they go into their class. And so what we were able to do with the Inscribe implementation was we were able to name it whatever we wanted to name it. And we talked about it, we consulted and discussed, and we decided on the name Tutoring Resources. And so what we really like is that a student can click on that link off to the left, and that takes them into an embedded screen within Inscribe, within the course. So you can still see off to the left, there are those options that are part of the class. They can still click on modules and go within their class. They still feel like they are in the LMS because they are. It's embedded, and we really liked that aspect. We wanted to give a, thinking about a student who's stuck on a problem and they're discouraged and their mental state is just not very positive right now. We wanted to give them as few hurdles as possible to get help. And so, and we feel like it'll be more likely to be used. We don't have data to back up and say, yes, that they're going to use tutoring way more if you have it within the class, but it just seems very logical to us that this would increase engagement if we make it really easy for them to access it.
I believe we're collecting the data. We just haven't analyzed it yet.
That's right.
To answer that question.
The data's there. And I did see a question about integration. So here's an example of an LMS integration. Inscribe also integrates into, lots of other tools on campus. So your website, your portal, courseware providers, sometimes from publishers. So, but this is a great example of an LMS-based integration. And I love how you guys have set it up to be so intuitive.
Yeah, and this next slide, just explaining students can post questions when they need help on course topics and assignments. And so, it's within their control when the student gets into Inscribe and they click on tutoring resources. And in our case, they can search for a question or they can post. And when they select post, it gives them an option. Do you want to ask a question or do you want to share something? And so it kind of walks them through that. And these are just examples of some of the questions that they can post. And one thing about sharing something, and we'll get into this data in a little bit, but we love how much students get engaged and involved. And I was even sharing some data with another person that's been helping us out a lot over in Inscribe. And I was telling her about how much our students are helping each other out and how involved they are. I thought we were just a special university because they were doing that so much. And she said, no, that happens with all. She said, that's really encouraging because all the universities are doing that. Students are really willing to jump in and help each other out. So I thought that was really cool. I think every university is special in that way, that students are willing to jump in and help each other out.
Yes, I love that. Always fills my heart with joy too when I see how quickly students will jump in to help each other as part of this process as well. And we talked about the timing thing, so this is a great example of that too.
Yeah, so this post just is an example of a student. This is a community, and so a student jumping in and saying, "Hey, does anyone want to meet tonight? Is there availability for tutoring this evening by chance?" And jumping in, and then you can see at the very bottom there is a badge for the tutor jumping in and saying, "Yeah, I can help as well." And so just a lot of this is happening organically. It's just happening within the communities, which makes us very happy.
Yeah, so a peer is responding there first saying, I can help. And then, even before the tutor got in and said, yeah, I'm available.
Maybe you have a new tutor
Right.
for the
Yeah.
next semester.
Yeah. And then this next one just shows, tutors can push important information and resources to students. So we talked a little bit when Joel was talking about level 0, 1, and 2 services. We see level 0 as not just the questions and answers that students ask each other that becomes part of the knowledge base. That is probably the bulk of level 0, but another part of it within Inscribe is the tutor's ability, and only tutors have this role. So students are assigned a specific role where they have access to do certain things within Inscribe. The tutor role they're the only people that can do this, but they can share resources. So we encourage our tutors, in week 6, if you're getting this question over and over again in your level 2 face-to-face appointments, look for opportunities to create a resource that students can use that helps them avoid commonly missed questions or common points of confusion. And so they can push that information out to the community, and then the members of the community can see it and recognize that it's from a tutor.
Awesome. Yes. So, and I love like the, posted once 700 people viewed this tip. So you get, you're getting your information in front of eyeballs when you can see that happening live in the platform. I always think that's really neat as well. So now we've got some data. So we've got it set up. Each of these different courses, multiple sections have been using it. Now we've got some data to look at in terms of what really happened.
Yeah, so I won't go over every number on this chart. I don't want to bore you too much, but this is really interesting data to us. Winter 21 semester was our first full semester with Inscribe, and so we were able to capture a lot of data using their reporting features to set a specific time frame from day 1 of the semester to the end of the semester. And there's different categories of data. This first slide shows just the categories of questions and answers posted, as well as the corresponding views. So we can see questions posted for Accounting 180, answers posted, and then how many views did those get. The third and fourth column here, it says question views in Inscribe. So that's when they're in their course, they click tutoring resources, they go to Inscribe, and they view the questions. The next column is from notifications. So we have that set up with emails. So they get a push notification through an email and they view it through that. So it's kind of more proactive. They don't even have to go into the tutoring community if they subscribe to certain questions and certain notifications. And then the total is just those 2 columns, the sum of them, the addition of them. So overall within those courses that we're using, you can see the grand totals at the bottom, and just a lot of good activity and a lot of views on the activity.
And we do get that question a lot, Brian. Like, how do you make sure that people see the content, and how do you help, drive engagement? And I think you've covered 2 really critical elements, which is having it right in front of them in the course, so it's there when they need it, and then having the system be proactive about reaching out to let people know what's happening in the community, and not relying on them to always have to come back to see everything. And it's illustrated so nicely here in this data.
Yeah, the next category, similarly, this is on shares. So when they share information, and this includes tutors, students, and even some instructors, though that's not part of our proactive model to have instructors involved, but we're going to share some information in a little bit that shows the breakdown of that activity. But this is just shares and views on those shares. And so you can see the activity. One thing to point out, so you'll see on this list CIT BC 102, 125, and 150. I'm sure a lot of you here watching this hopefully can relate to to some of the common challenges, but our students are the tutors. So we hire student workers to be tutors, and this has been a really difficult class to fill. So we don't actually have a tutor, and we didn't have one last semester for these classes, but it was part of our Inscribe list of classes to try this out with. And so we wanted to run the community anyways and see what happens. So there's not as much activity, not nearly as much, but there's still a lot of students just jumping in and helping students. There's no tutor overseeing it though.
Gotcha.
And so,
That helps explain that information. And just to clarify for folks, the difference is, you know, if you post a question in Inscribe, it's like raising your hand to say, I need help. And if you're posting a share, it's more like contributing some article or resource that you think other people will find useful. So the balance is going to be heavily weighted to the questions. It's interesting also to see how many shares you got.
yeah. And we like the homepage of Inscribe that we showed earlier. When you click tutoring resources, it even brings up little messages, you know, that says, within your community, there are 5 unanswered questions. Do you want to jump in and help? And I love that, because it's driving them, you know, those people that are wanting to help out, it's making it easy for them to do that. So this last one is resources and endorsements. So this is what I mentioned earlier that only a tutor can do. They can endorse answers. We encourage our tutors to do that, which basically gives that badge, that stamp of approval on an answer that another student gave. So that not only can the student look at it and say, yeah, this is a peer helping me out, but oh, the tutor agrees with the answer that was given. And then the resources that the tutors share. So this shows how many views they're getting, how many views within Inscribe and within the notifications, and then how many endorsements are given in each class for that time period of winter 21.
All right. Students versus tutors.
Yeah, this one was this one we like for us. What we're seeing here in the top orange bar is just the student activity. That's where our emphasis, that's where we want to see it. This is kind of our philosophy on this is well, it's 2 things. One, it's we want to provide support for students when and where they need it. But 2, we want this to be student, dang it, here's my mantra, I've forgotten. It's just, but it's student driven and mentor supported. And that doesn't sound right, Brian. It's not rolling off the tongue, but essentially.
I like it though.
Thanks. And we see here, you know, just the activity in these courses. And then the next slide, let's go to our next little portion of the slide. We can see that the students account for 81% of the activity in the communities. The tutors are 16.37 in the community. That's a ratio we're quite happy with, and we think is a healthy ratio. We even see the instructors in there a little bit unanticipated in our model. I'm aware that other schools want their instructors more involved, but because we pool all our students in the same community, we don't want one instructor saying, you know, here's the answer, or here's the way you should do this, and then other students might be, you know, that may not be the way their faculty member wants it done, or you know. So we kind of said this is a student space by students, for students, supported by tutors who are also students. Instructors kind of stay out of it, but they get in there and we're not kicking them out at this point. So they've got their own sections. You know, if they want to help their students, they've got a place to do that. This is a place for students. Another thing, and kind of addressing a question Norman had about how does this translate into retention and stuff, and that's kind of tough for us because we're doing so many things simultaneously. I mean, there are like college mentors program being applied in a lot of courses. There are, you know, or kind of a student mentor, but an extended student mentor through different courses. We've got this tutoring stuff. They're changing the way they design courses, and so it's really hard to know, well, was it us? Was it our intervention that helped retention or dropped it? So, I mean, there's just lots of good literature on student engagement tied to retention. So we can only assume, and I'd love to go back for a moment, Katie, maybe 4 slides to the first data slide. What we were offering before is
this one
right here. What we were offering before was live face-to-face tutoring. Since we've been partnering with Inscribe and gone to this model of adding level 0 and level 1 tutoring, you can see down there, just in that middle column, question views and Inscribe, or, you know, that there have been 1,544 questions asked. If those questions were asked with a live tutor, only the student who got the answer would benefit from that. So here we see 1,500 questions, which is more than there would have been in face-to-face tutoring. We've obviously got more answers than even questions were provided, because that's sometimes you got a tutor and you got peers helping out, answering questions. You may have more than one endorsed answer. But overall, the question views and inscribed 91,000. You don't get that. And we can go back to where we were, but you don't get that with live face-to-face tutoring. That kind of visibility, we're reaching far more students. There's more engagement going on there, which, from the literature can only lead to better retention and stuff. But
Yeah.
and we hope that all bears out. But I also know from 20 years in this business, retention is a very difficult needle to move. And it only kind of marches very incrementally despite fairly Herculean efforts.
Well, and I think one of the
Yeah.
other benefits that we often hear too from students in this model is it's not just seeing the answer that I needed, but it's like knowing that other people also were confused about something, that you're not the only one, and that goes a long way to helping boost student confidence and motivation. And I think there's a lot of literature on that as well. So you get that duality of value there, like the tactical, just getting them the answer, and then the sort of human side of not feeling quite so alone. And I was going to say, we do have some other data. I know BYU is a little bit early in this process, so we're still running analysis with them. We have some data from some earlier work that we've done, and we'll share all that with everybody after the webinar, include that in our follow-up, so you can see some of the impact data that's existed elsewhere.
Yep. Tanya asked about qualitative data. We got oodles of it, and it's very positive. There's few people that are saying, didn't get help or it took way too long. The reality is they're getting support much faster, and that's kind of what we're showing here. On average, students found it very easy to moderately easy to find answers and inscribe. 68% received answers within a few hours, and 43% had answers within 24 hours. So 24 hours is great. A few hours is less than the 24 hours, and that's fabulous. To have response within 30 minutes or 5 minutes or 2 hours or something is a lot better than scheduling something with a tutor 2 days from now, which is kind of often the case, or even next week with our live tutors. So they're getting answers much more quickly. 86% found the answers to be moderately to extremely useful. That's important, a separate metric for us. Sure, you got a response in 3 hours, but did it answer your question? And we're finding, we're pleased with that number. Obviously, more work that can be done there. 91% of students feeling supported, through the different tutoring resources that are offered in the academic support resources. So that's kind of a benchmark. I don't know that we were asking that question before, but this is where we're at today. That they're feeling they get the support we need. There's obviously a large percentage of students we're still not reaching with tutoring. Whether it's the stigma of tutoring or whatever, we're not getting to them. Students who have it from their grades, from various other indicators that suggest they could benefit from tutoring, who just haven't clicked or only clicked once and never came back. So there's lots of students we still want to reach out to and
Still lots of
convince.
opportunity. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
We're doing some fun things. I think we'll address that in maybe our next couple slides. With what we call nudges. Yeah, not yet, but that's okay.
Okay.
We'll get to it, but it's nudges. So stay tuned for a couple more slides.
Okay, great. All right.
I think this is mine too, right, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay. We kind of divvy these up. While cost isn't our only thing, it's an important thing. And face-to-face tutoring is more expensive than the peer tutoring. That's just the reality of it. But the reality of it too is that the peer tutoring and the 24/7 nature of it is getting our students faster help too. And what we're seeing is that it's our vision isn't to drive out or to eliminate face-to-face tutoring. It's to get students faster support, help where and when they need it. We again expect to always have the live tutoring, but our numbers have dropped. As you see in yellow at the bottom of that center column, we've got an overall decrease of 806 appointments over our previous semester when we didn't have our level 0 and level 1 tutoring options with Inscribe. So anything else we want to point out there? Let's see, winter 21.
Just less dependency on level 2 tutoring, given the nature of our students wanting to provide other options for them to get help.
Right.
Yeah.
And we haven't really reduced the number of tutors. So that means maybe other people are getting helped. I mean, I don't think we reduced at all, did we? We reduced the hours a little bit. We asked some of our tutors to share their time, so don't only make your time available for face-to-face tutoring, but we want you to reserve some of your time for being in this community space, endorsing questions, adding resources. So we did do some time shift on some tutors, but I think we had the same number of tutors as we've always had. So hopefully students are getting more service there too.
Awesome.
Okay.
There we go. All right.
So impact of one thing we wanted to try and learn about is the impact of having the knowledge base. Winter 21 semester, first semester with Inscribe, day one, we didn't have any questions that had already been asked because we'd never gone through it before. So that was great for engagement, as you saw for the winter 21 data that we just shared. But now we're kind of interested halfway into spring semester. We did an analysis looking at weeks 1 through 7 of both semesters. We have 14-week semesters, so this is kind of the midway point. And so we were able to look at, okay, total views. Winter 21, 82,264. Spring views are up, and that's a good sign in my opinion, and in our opinion, because people are viewing what's already been posted there in a lot of cases. We also thought, okay, should posts be up or down? And we didn't go into this. I didn't go into this data collection with a super definitive, it's got to be this or it's a disaster. It was more just like, I want to learn about how these different communities behaved when there was a knowledge base and when there wasn't. And when it came to total posts, that the amount of posts is down, and that's consistent with what I've had some of my student workers who help me, help me look over the communities each day. They're reporting that as well. They think it's down about 20-30% from last semester, and to me, that's also a good sign, if anything, because we want people to use that search feature. We want them to look at what's already there. And then total tutor endorsements given. If tutors are doing a good job giving endorsements on the questions, but if there's less questions, there's going to be less endorsements. And so that's what we're seeing there as well. Again, we're excited to look at a full semester, compare all of winter 21 to all of spring 21, but this is, at least for now, what the data is showing us. And to me, it's positive.
That's really interesting. I mean, it's a platform where the types of engagement that you see is going to evolve over time, as your knowledge base grows, as different things change on campus. So that's really interesting data to see.
Yeah, a little reduction in new questions, but overall readership up. So
right. So yeah, I mean, it does imply people are actually reusing the content that you created for them in that first semester, which is great.
We also have our tutors go through another one of their duties in this space, again, besides their face-to-face tutoring duties, are kind of culling questions that weren't relevant, no longer relevant, questions from 2021 that weren't relevant. So they keep the space relevant. It's part of their job is to help kind of tend that garden of their, tend that space.
Yes. Yeah.
And then this last one for community or for challenges, one big challenge is just keeping the engagement high at all times. So in some cases, we'll have tutors who are just ready to go and they want to spend they want to, so what we do specifically for by appointment tutors, normally they post 10 hours a week. We tell them post 7 and spend at least 3 hours a week on Inscribe. Be engaged at least, every day. We want you jumping in and being engaged in Inscribe. And so some tutors are just really good at that, but they're saying, how do I spend my 3 hours? There's no students posting questions. And we encourage those tutors, look at creating resources, look at common questions that, be creative. This is you, as Joelle mentioned, you're tending your garden. This is your community to own. We want to delegate to the tutors and because they're the content experts. I'm not an expert in chemistry or accounting. They're the experts in that. And so we want them to make it their own and do their best. So we have to work through those challenges. The other challenge though is, student workers aren't perfect. So some questions get unanswered and the tutor's not jumping in often enough. And to help compensate for that, I have 2 student workers that work in my area that they help not just with Inscribe, but they help with all things online tutoring, with all that we have to do to get it set up every semester, and quality assurance on level 2 appointments and other things like that. But part of what they do is they check in to look for unanswered questions. And it's really helpful because within each community, there's a tab that you can specifically click and go to show you all the unanswered questions. And if they're seeing that a tutor has let that go and it's a question from yesterday, they're reaching out to those tutors saying, hey, can you get to this question, please? And so we're trying to keep engagement high on both ends, doing that and addressing that challenge, making sure the right level of help is being given. So just like a level 2, just like a face-to-face tutoring appointment, we review the recordings for Zoom recordings of those to say, okay, is the tutor helping out the student too much? Is the tutor holding the student's hand so that this student, they're never gonna learn unless they're with the tutor in the appointment? We try to, we use tutoring principles to drive them away from that practice. We look for the same things in the Inscribe communities, and they're also checking that each day to say, okay, would an instructor be uncomfortable with how much the tutor is helping the student here? And I'm pleased to say it's very rare. We've had a few complaints in one of our communities that we addressed and we worked with the tutors on, but really the student is being seen. Every post they make is seen by everybody. So there's very low likelihood of cheating, but sometimes, and that was the case with this community. It wasn't malicious cheating, but it was a tutor, in some cases a student, thinking that they were being helpful, but whoa, they're helping out too much. And
Yeah.
so that's another challenge that we've looked at as well. And so
But nice to have, I think, what we've heard is that having the visibility into seeing that that's happening and being able to intervene is actually one of the benefits, because I think a lot of people, it's happening in conversations that take place where I don't know they're happening, but when it happens in Inscribe, oh, I can course correct and have a chat with that person about why that wasn't appropriate, for example.
yeah, exactly. There are so many links and websites that students can go to, but this is in-house. We can help oversee it. We can help make sure that it's going on, that it's not going on, and that the learning is taking place. So other things to cover from this slide, we had some single sign-on issues that we coordinated, and just with what Joelle mentioned at the beginning of our presentation with Pathway Worldwide and some of the certifications and email addresses being different. And so, probably the most challenging part of that was working within our own IT department to get the right people at the meeting and get the solutions moving forward. But we were able to get that straightened out and squared away.
Yes, you guys have a lot of different logins. I remember that was a little bit tricky to navigate, but
Yeah.
So and just so folks know, Inscribe we'll use LTI to integrate with your LMS. We can use Shibboleth, SAML, OAuth to integrate with your school's SSO system. So your students should never have to use a credential that is not your school credential to get into their Inscribe community. We can always make that work. Awesome. Next steps. The nudges. I see the nudges, Joelle.
Okay. I was answering Nicole's question. I'll finish it in just a bit here, Nicole. Or I can just answer it now. We weren't using a platform previously. The question was, were we using a platform with students prior to Inscribe? And we weren't. We have with instructors, but lots of colleges and departments have their own thing, their Facebook groups and all sorts of stuff kind of all over, but there was nothing central at the university that had any consistency that every student knows that they could go there for that course. So that's what we're hoping to provide is not, you don't have to just go searching on Facebook or Discord or anywhere else for your community. There may be other communities out there, but for your class, there's at least one known official one at the university.
And we've
Yeah.
heard that from other folks where we're swapping out another platform. I'm thinking we often see Facebook or Slack. The feedback that we tend to get from students is the ease of access, having it integrated right into the course is a huge benefit. And also relative to Slack, if a question's been asked and answered yesterday, good luck like ever finding that again, in a system that's more transactional like that. So having that repository, I think students really appreciated that. And then the third thing was just what you just said, Joelle, which is they like the idea that it's an official space, that they know the answers they're getting are sanctioned by the faculty member or the tutor or the university. And so it feels, there's like a level of certainty to it that they really appreciate, that they don't feel like they get when they're on the social site like a Facebook or something.
Yeah, so I guess we're already in spring here. That's the way our semesters work, but so we're anxious to see how the rest of the semester goes, as Brian alluded to. Inscribe's got this massive data set called learning interactions that we're looking forward to drilling down into to answer some of our questions about how students are using Inscribe. Are they searching within the LMS, or are they spending most of their time in the main Inscribe community, jumping out of the LMS? Is the usage pattern for them to be looking at, to be searching and finding questions first before they start trying to type a new question? So those are some of the kind of detailed questions we want to understand about user behavior in this space, but amongst other questions. This nudges idea that we're playing with this semester is, we've got a fairly impressive analytics team here at the university, and we can see assignments where students are struggling. And again, all our online courses are identical, meaning for all the accounting 202s are just copies of each other. So in week 4, if we see a big dive after the week 4 assignment in performance, and it usually persists, what we're seeing is these cascading patterns. If you bomb on week 4 and then you bomb on week 6 again, you're potentially in trouble the rest of the semester. So in comes our office and says, we see these very consistent patterns, and for this course, because we see what happens in that week 4 assignment, we're sending out this email nudge to students, and we can control it. We can say students just who are performing at a certain level, we can send out messages to all different types of student groups, but we're saying in 2 weeks, we send this out halfway through week 2, we say in a couple of weeks, there's a doozy of an assignment in week 4. Prepare now, pay attention to your readings this coming week. If you feel you need it, schedule a time with a tutor or get in the Inscribe community if you don't feel solid in these concepts, because how you perform on this upcoming week 4 assignment in accounting is going to determine a lot of how you perform the rest of the class. So from our office, we can see that data. We're giving you a heads up. You have to be careful not to be kind of deterministic in saying, if you bomb this, you might as well give up the course. You're not crawling back for bombing week 4 assignment. But we're experimenting with these nudges. That's not necessarily tied directly to anything we're doing in Inscribe, except that that's a place where students can go to start asking questions to get prepared for that week 4 assignment. It's stuff that students or instructors should be doing with their students too, but we're just one more group now, kind of, and we kind of see ourselves as a little bit more of a peer-oriented group. It's not the instructor saying, like they say every week's important, every assignment's important, but it's your kind of former peers or your people who aren't your teacher saying, data says you need to do well in week 4 to do well in this class. So experimenting with that, we've got this big question that Katie kind of alluded to. Does the Slack type thing work better than there are definitely advantages and disadvantages to both. We want to know, kind of understand better, because we have a number of courses with Slack in them. Which does the knowledge base, is that approach that we're working with and Scribe on, add more value than the always live, just stream of conscious kind of Slack, Facebook feed type community.
Right.
So those are big questions we've got as we look forward. But overall, we're just thrilled with how things are going thus far. And our students appear to be too, so which is why we're thrilled.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, Joelle and Brian, for that great rundown. I think you framed up the challenge that you guys face, which, as we talked about, I think many people kind of face the same challenge. How do I provide just-in-time support for my students, but do it in a cost-effective way, meet them where they are? Your challenge amplified by the worldwide nature of your students. And I think this idea of level 0, 1, 2 support and really thinking about this continuum of support opportunities, engagement opportunities, is something that a lot of schools are thinking about today and starting to experiment with ways to implement that. So your example here, I think, is going to resonate really nicely with everybody. I did want to pause and see if there were any final questions or comments from the audience. Danielle, did we miss anything along the way that came into the chat or anything new?
No, I don't think we missed anything along the way. Joelle and Brian were really great about jumping in and answering questions in the chat. If you have any questions, we have a couple more minutes here and Katie and I can stay on and answer any additional questions.
That would be awesome. So I just want to thank Joelle and Brian again so much for being here and sharing your story, and loved all the great data that you provided. They can also hang out, or, if you guys will send, I think you all heard this session's being recorded, so we'll send it out for you afterward. And you can always follow up with additional questions from there as well. We're happy to provide any other answers that you might need.
Yeah, I'd be happy to visit with Walter if he had some follow-up questions about kind of, past school. How do you keep students connected once they leave the university? I don't know that I've got a lot of answers there, but if I'm happy to address that a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, so in other places where InScribe is used, it's designed to be really flexible about who participates in your communities. It's really up to the institution to make that decision. So you can create communities that even alumni, or once students have graduated, they can continue to access. And it's been an interesting way to I think for some folks, engage alumni in a different way than they have been engaging them in the past, with this sort of lightweight mentorship type opportunity. But we're a little early. So as your students graduate, we can explore whether there's some ways to do that with you, Joelle and Brian, as well. Well, thanks everybody so much for being here. Again, look for the follow-up and the recording. We'll send that out shortly. If you have any questions for me, you can reach me at katie@inscribeapp.com. I think Danielle's going to post some stuff in the chat. So reach out to us. You can also just check out our website. And we look forward to seeing you all again sometime soon.